All right. Thank you, Jay. Well, my name is Angel and I am an alcoholic. And yes, I do probably speak with a little bit of a Southern twang. I see a lot of beautiful faces in here I haven't seen in a long time. Um, and so thank you. Thank you for your support and uh, always being there and always being here. Uh, my sobriety date is February the 9th of 2016. And man, I tell you what, it's been a journey. I would have never imagined the life that I could have 8+ years ago, stuck in such a horrible, horrible addiction. Um, you know, it, these things are always so nerve wracking for me. You know, it's been a minute since I've told my story too. And I think Jay, you probably asked me probably a month or so ago if I would come in and share. And so I think I prayed probably about 4 or 5 times a day. Although I'm sure God probably heard my voice the first time. But there's just something about being close to God and feeling God's presence. But my story is not unique, of course. We've all been there. We've all done that. I've been through many tragic events in my life. Uh, Drank pretty much my life for 13 plus years. And I've had the domestic violence in my past. I've had the molestation, the abuse, and all of those tragedies that we all talk about, when we're trying to relate to one another. But, I understand today that that's not what made me an alcoholic. I'm pretty sure I was born with this disease. I was very irritable, restless, and discontent at a very young age. I mean, I can remember being probably 7 or 8 years old and being in school and not having any friends. And it's not that probably the kids wouldn't play with me. It's just that I just didn't feel like they liked me. And I would come home and I would tell my mom that nobody likes me, and she'd say, "Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I guess I'll go eat some worms." And I remember hearing that over and over and over. But I often thought that something was just wrong with me. And my mother was a beautiful mother. I grew up in a home that my father was hardworking, dedicated to the family. He's a normie, and man, he's a phenomenal man. He's my hero. But my mother suffered a horrible addiction, nearly probably all of my life. And I understand though today. I remember it being about age 13, and I was so angry at her, because I would come home and she'd be passed out in a plate of spaghetti, and I didn't know whether she was breathing or what was going on, and I resented her. And I remember telling her one day, and I looked her in her face and I said, "I will never be like you." Ooh, I tell you something. God's got jokes because I walked in her footsteps completely. But I'm going to tell you, Alcoholics Anonymous taught me that my mother loved me the best that she knew how. And I had a beautiful mother. And despite her addiction, she did everything she could to give me the love and support. And my mother, there was one thing I prayed for when I got sober this time. I had a stint of sobriety for about 5 years. I got sober back in 2009. And here in the South, we have a lot of programs that are faith-based programs. It's the Bible Belt. And I went through a faith-based program in 2009, and I got a wonderful foundation with my higher power. But I didn't have the coping skills. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know. Like I was told, you're delivered, you're set free, you'll never have to worry about addiction ever again. And I drank on that idea. And when I got sober this time, ooh, you know, we talk about a bottom, and we know like everybody's bottoms are different. But I was so far down, I couldn't reach up and touch bottom. When I went to medical detox in um, December of 2015, I was so spiritually broken. I had my daughter, I had gained custody back of my daughter. I have a beautiful daughter, and she'll be 21. Well, she'll be 22. She's 21 now. She'll be 22 in December. And I had gained custody back of her. I had her for 9 months in my life. I was married to a good Christian man. Life was wonderful. And then when I relapsed and went to detox, everything that I thought was gone in the blink of an eye. And I remember speaking with my husband at the time, and I told him, I said, well, the plan was for me to come back home. I go to medical detox, I come back home, I'll get a new job, everything will be fine. And he said, no, Angel, you're going to go to treatment for at least 2 weeks. And I said, hell, you say, I'm not going to treatment. I just spent 7 years, the last 7 years working in a treatment center. They can't tell me anything that I don't already know. But that's the mentality I had, and I was a very sick girl. And he said, well, you're not coming home. Well, I knew at this time that if I didn't come home, my ex-husband, my daughter's father, would have gotten wind that I had relapsed, because all this was a secret, that I had relapsed and I had went to detox, and he would have came and got my daughter. And that's exactly what happened. And I left out of that medical detox. I cussed everyone out. I left AMA, against medical advice. It was 83 degrees here when I left for detox. The day that I walked out, it was 23 degrees. And I remember talking to my mother on the phone, and I told her that I was going to kill myself. And she said, Angel, if you kill yourself, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, well, I guess I'll see you in hell. And I couldn't feel the presence of God nowhere around me, because I was that broken. I was that hopeless. I was desperate. I was desperate for the pain to go away, but there was nothing I could do. I was just left there with me, myself, and the sickness. And I remember walking out of there, and this sweet lady picked me up. I hitchhiked. I've never hitchhiked a day in my life, but I hitchhiked from, it's called Ashland, Alabama, to Birmingham, Alabama, which is a good hour and 45 minutes. But this sweet lady and her son picked me up, and they took me to another hospital, and the hospital wouldn't do anything for me. So the only option I had at this point was to go to a treatment facility. So I ended up at a treatment facility, but on the way, I called my daughter. And she's 12 years old at this time. And y'all, 12 years old is such a sensitive age for a young girl. And she was on the other line. And her little voice cracked. She said, Mama, how could you do this to me? And I can still hear it. And I can still feel it today. How could I? Here's this precious little girl, and all she ever wanted was her mother to be present in her life. And I know how that felt. I desperately know how that felt. And I make it to this halfway house, and I'm weak, and I'm sick, and I want to die. And I remember looking at these four walls and I'm angry with God. Like, I don't want to have any, I don't, I took my Bible with me to detox and I slung it across the room because I said, haven't I been like this great servant for you, God, to allow something like this to happen to me? I couldn't understand. A couple of weeks had went by. I started feeling a little bit better physically, not emotionally, not mentally. Some girls had came into this treatment facility with me and they said, "Hey, Angel, you know, you want to go to a meeting?" And I'm like, what kind of meeting? I had heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'd never been to a meeting. And I was like, sure, anything's better than sitting here, this halfway house. So I go to this meeting and and like I said, I was so angry with God. When we pulled up to this meeting hall, it was in a church. So I walk in and I sit down and I see these 12 steps on the wall. And, you know, they say God. We all say the Serenity prayer. I'm like, crap, what did I sign up for? You know, this is not what I want. But the crazy thing about it was a big book discussion. And two of my best friends today were in there and they were passionate about what they were reading about this Bill and Bob. And they were sitting there and they were banging the tables and they were cussing and they were they even dropped the F bomb. And I said, oh my goodness, we're in a church and they're cussing. Like, I didn't even cuss, y'all, until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And then what confused me even more, after all of that, we all got up in a circle, we held hands, and we said the Lord's Prayer. I walked out of there thinking, boy, I don't know what that was about, but it sure was fun. So it enticed me to go to another meeting. And at that second meeting, this lady walks in. Beautiful lady. Blonde hair, a little bit older. She had all these beautiful rings on, well dressed, well spoken. And I get emotional thinking about it. And she comes up to me and she says, "Hey, my name is Kathy. Do you have a sponsor?" And I said, "No, ma'am." Because you got to remember, I'm angry. She said, "Well, honey, if you need me and if you would like, I can sponsor you." And I said, "I don't need a sponsor. There's nothing that you can help me with." Because, see, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought that I had got myself into this mess and I was going to have to get myself out. And a couple of weeks went by and she told me, she said, "Well, honey, I'm here if you need me." And she was just as sweet as could be. A couple of weeks went by. Here she comes again. And let me tell you, the women in Alcoholics Anonymous, I am so grateful for. I love you fellas, but let me tell you something. My heart is so with the women. And they would nudge and they would tell me, "Angel, you need her to be your sponsor. You need her to be your sponsor." And I'm just like, you know. And she comes up to me and she says, "Have you found a sponsor yet?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, I just want you to know it's important that you find a sponsor because you need, you know, it's suggested that you start working these steps so you can be free." And I said, and I was polite and I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Would you like to go to the Waffle House?" And I said, "Heck yeah." She sold me right there. And if y'all don't know what the Waffle House is, it is a beautiful, beautiful restaurant. And I'm saying that sarcastically, because anybody who knows in the South what a Waffle House is, you have been to them at least at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But they serve good food. And you know what? It had been a couple of weeks, and I was broke, busted, and disgusted, and surely could not be trusted. So I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. And I was poor, and having a hot meal sounded really, really good. And so we went to the Waffle House. And at that moment, I had some clarity, and I surrendered. And I said, Dadgummit, okay, if this woman wants to help me, fine. What's it going to hurt? What am I going to do anyway? Where am I going to go? You know? And my motives probably wasn't that great in the beginning, because I'm looking for an outside solution. And making that commitment has been one of the most beautiful parts of my journey today. I have the same sponsor, and today, and she will celebrate 33 years of sobriety soon. And she showed me unconditional love. And she was able to convey that to me to where now I can show unconditional love. Working these steps, though, I was probably about as honest as I could have been in the beginning. Matter of fact, I procrastinated quite a bit especially when it came to that 4-step. I know for a fact I did everything wrong, and I did everything backwards, and I did everything very minor, just enough to stay sober. And I remember getting to that 4-step, and I remember her calling me up. She said, Angel, I want you to meet me at the office 3:30 today. We're going to go over your 4-step. And I said, oh, crap. I said, yes, ma'am. And I hung up the phone, and I said, oh, crap. I'm not even done with my 4-step. And I'd been sitting on it for weeks. So, here I am. I'm sitting here, playing the blame game, of course. I got all these people on here that I don't like right now because, they all cause me harm. And we went over that 5th-step, 4-step in our 5th, and she pointed some things out to me. But, I really never grasped or understood until quite a few years into sobriety. I look at it now, I don't think I really started spiritually growing until I was about 4 years sober. It was like something just clicked with me. And I was doing service, and I was doing the necessary things, but something happened around that 4-year mark, and it was just like a little light bulb. And I know why people talk about how more people go out on step 9 than they do 4. Because, man, those amends are, when you make a true amends, they're not easy. But boy, are they freeing. And that's what I've learned today through this whole process, is that it is about uncovering, discovering, discarding the things that are blocking me off. Because in the beginning, it was all about trying to fill a spiritual problem with that physical solution. A good friend of mine, and I heard him speak many times, and he said, with the maladjustment, with me in the very beginning, it was like, I put the plug in the jug. You take away the alcohol, you got to give me something better, because if not, I pick up a man. 6 months later, he rolls over, his breath stinks, he's got to go. Then, or I pick up a fork, I look in the mirror one day and I'm too fat, so I pick up the phone, call a doctor to fix it. So it's just that constant trying to fill that spiritual problem with that physical solution. And through this process of getting armed with the facts about who Angel is the most freeing. The freedom that I've been given today through the the work, the constant work, the constant evaluation. Um, I look when I go to bed at night and I do my inventory. I'm like, you know what, God, I've just come to realize that everything that I go through, it's not even my garbage. You know, it's it's everybody else's stuff that it constantly problem solving. But how God has allowed me the opportunity to be able to stay in the solution to help people. And I have so much gratitude for being able to lay my head down with a clear conscience at night. And the relationships that have been restored. I have a 21-year-old daughter that I broke her heart over 8 years ago that tells me, Mama, you are the best mom in the whole world. The relationship that I have with my father, to be able to be present with him. And I'm going to tell you, I've been through probably more tragedy in sobriety than I ever went through while I was out there drinking. We've had family suicides. My dad's had 3 strokes. My mother passed away when I was 13 months sober. And God allowed me the opportunity to be present for my father when my mother passed away, to make all the arrangements and not be this person over here in the corner that somebody else had to console. That's God's grace. And I look today at if I had made a list of everything that I had wanted when I first got sober, I'd have sold myself short. I'd have said, well, I would like to have my daughter back. I'd like to have a good job and a home. That's all I would have asked for. God's grace has been so abundant in my life. When I was 6 months sober, I was offered a job working at a medical detox as a tech. 6 months sober. Let me tell you, this is the funny thing. It was not just a detox. It was the detox that I cussed everyone out at and left AMA. God had a hand in it. Alcoholics Anonymous gave me back my relationship with my higher power. The relationship that I have with my higher power is stronger today than it ever was those 5 years that I had sober. You know, I often I drive a lot. I still work for the same medical detox, and I'm on the road quite a bit with them. And I think it's important not to forget where we come from. And I often spend a lot of time with my higher power on the road. And I look back at everything and how it's been aligned in my life, and how my higher power has always been right there beside me. My daughter was able to come live with me a couple of years ago, and I got her through her junior and senior year in high school. I got her through her college. She's now a paramedic and has her own apartment, pays her own bills. I mean, I know what I was doing at age 21, and it was not that. God gave me the opportunity to be able to be present for my daughter when she needed me the most. And I was able to show her and teach her how to have self respect and dignity, how to be a lady. And these are things that we take for granted. These are the things that we don't even think about when we're out there drinking because our drinking does the thinking for us. And people say, well, do you ever think about like having a drink, you know, or anything like that? And I just, because for a newcomer, it's almost impossible for them to imagine that you can honestly be free from alcohol, not cured, but free from the obsession. And I tell them the story. I'm like, this is how I know I'm not cured. I remember when I was about 2 years sober and I was leaving from South Alabama and I was headed to North Alabama to work to work at a facility in North Alabama. And I was listening to a speaker on and and I was into it. You ever hear those speakers where you're just like, yeah, that's good, you know, and you'll actually like listen to it like 50 more times. Well, it was that speaker, and actually it was Marty J. That's who it was, and uh, and I got into a little town called Wetumpka, Alabama. Well, in the distance, and Ken probably knows where Wetumpka is. In the distance, I see a casino. Now I don't even gamble, you know, but the thought crossed my mind. It sure would be nice to have a little extra change in your pocket. Maybe you'll get lucky. Go in there and spend $20. It's fine. And this is the crazy thing is that speaker that I was listening to, and also I'm headed to an AA meeting. That speaker I was listening to went deaf. And the only thing that I could hear was my own thoughts. Second thought was, dang, Angel, you might can meet a man and you won't even have to spend no money. Hmm. Then the third thought, you could have a drink and nobody would ever know. Thank God for a God conscience. Thank God for being that I was in good fit spiritual condition. Because as soon as that thought come through, I heard the speaker talking again. And then I heard God say, now, Angel, sometimes he talks to me that way. He said, now, Angel, you are in a company car with a GPS tracking device on it, which means that if you go in there and you find a man and you start drinking, you're not going to be in that, you're going to be missing. Because I would probably have ended up somewhere in like Miami, Florida, with somebody I don't even know, and I would lose my job. And this is what God said: you'd lose your job, you'd lose your relationship with your child. But and then I was like, snap, thank you, God. And I kept trucking right on to the AA meeting. And when I got there, and the whole way there, I was thinking to myself, why, after all this time, did I have that thought? And then I was like, I cannot share this in an AA room because they're going to think I'm about to relapse. And I went and shared it anyway. And my good friends in the fellowship, you know what they told me? They kind of chuckled. And they said, that's called the peculiar mental blank spot. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. You're not cured. And I felt secure and I felt okay. You know, I look at my life today and I live a complete life of maximum service. I was telling Dana and Jay when we came in, I said, when I prayed to be of maximum service, I said, and it was like I was given these opportunity after opportunity, sponsees, like out the woodwork. During COVID, I was able to sponsor like uh ladies over in other countries. And it just grew and grew and grew. But I told God, I said, God, like you putting all this responsibility on me, you're gonna have to make some time because I don't know where it's all gonna fit in. And he makes the time. My responsibility is to suit up and show up and to be of service. And I was elected last October for our area treatment and accessibility chair. So I get to serve at the area level, and it is amazing. Now, I have been going to area for quite a few years, but I've never served at that level. And boy, you want to talk about a process of information overload. It is a lot. But, you know, God, God has equipped me to be able to kind of soak some of that in and to be able to use it and to understand because I would have never imagined until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous how far our hand really reaches. It is amazing. COVID was a blessing, it was a curse. And I want to say that, this is when we all know when Zoom meetings come in. And I had a friend that reached out to me from the UK. And he called me on WhatsApp and he said, Angel, I've got to have some help. I said, well, what's going on? He said, we got a friend over in Canada who has been drinking and she's passed out underneath the tree and it's 4 feet of snow. So I'm like, how in the world, what are we going to do? Like, how do we do this? So I said, you know what? And it's like God just said, uh, look up the area and where she lives, find the local Alcoholics Anonymous club and give them a call. And I did. And I got someone on the phone and they got to her and got her to the hospital. And a lady, oh, it's just a beautiful thing. And a lady from Alcoholics Anonymous went to the hospital and sat with her. And the next day went to her and brought her to the meeting. Man, we are a bunch of beautiful people. I cannot express to you how much you have enriched my life. Y'all have taught me how to grow up. Y'all taught me how to balance a checkbook. I didn't even have a checking account for the first year and a half I was sober. I was getting my paychecks cashed at the local grocery store. Y'all taught me how to pay a vehicle off. The only thing that I have ever owned in my life. Y'all taught me how to be a mother. You taught me how to have integrity. how to respect myself and my body. I have such a debt of gratitude to Alcoholics Anonymous for the life that I have been given today. And I'm going to tell you, I know my sweet daddy is one happy man. I don't have I don't have to ask him for anything. You know, when I made these amends to my father, I was honest about those amends. And today I can do for my father. He doesn't have to do for me. He doesn't have to worry about me. Now, will he still let me pay for dinner or lunch? Absolutely not. I have to basically run out the door and he's trying to give me cash. He's just proud of his baby girl. All he wanted was for her to be sober and stay sober and to live a happy, joyous, free life. And that's what I have today. People think that this life is that hard to obtain. It's not. We just have to do the next right thing. We have to take suggestions. And I had to take some suggestions. I had to take some hard suggestions. And there were some things I didn't do that I should have done. And I can tell you one thing, it never paid off in my favor. I learned some hard lessons. You know, God will give us many opportunities to have a spiritual experience. I've learned that, especially with defects of character. You know, you pray for patience tolerance. You know, he give you 50 hours to become patient while sitting in a line somewhere or being on the phone or, you know, being tolerant, give you 100 opportunities to be tolerant. You put 100 people in front of you that's intolerable. And I get to work in the front lines today. And I do so much even outside of my job. And I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh, you know, I need a job like you because it'll keep me sober." I'm like, "Absolutely, it will not. If you work a job like I'm working, you best better be working a program of recovery because this job will make you sick because you are pouring out more than you are getting in." Now, does it have its benefits? Absolutely. Does it have its rewards? Absolutely. But I learned from the first stint in working in treatment that I have to have a program of recovery. I'm the real deal. I'm a real alcoholic. People who aren't like me can do it without a program, but that's not my experience. My track record proves to me that I've got to have these tools, and I have to have y'all. I have to have the fellowship. Keep looking at my time, Jay. I'm looking at sweet Sharon over here. But, you know, I and I grew up, I'll share this with you real quick. I think one reason why I struggled so much growing up is I was diagnosed with a learning disability and I'm dyslexic. And I have word dyslexia and I have number dyslexia. And back in school, they they didn't diagnose you. They just put you in a special class. And I was smart, but I didn't learn that easily because of the way everybody else was being taught. I learned differently. And So it was real hard for me. And I felt like that I was very different than everyone else. You know, everybody else did look at us differently. And God's even made me stronger in those areas. This book right here is one of the only books that I've ever been able to understand. And I'm not ashamed anymore because of y'all. You've loved me anyway. Like I was telling Jay and Miss Dana, I said, my sponsor told me that nobody was going to eat me if I messed up. So I appreciate y'all not eating me and y'all loving me. So thank you for this beautiful opportunity to allow me to come in and share a little bit of about my life, my recovery, my life that I've been given today, and saving a seat for me. I never want to leave. Thank you for allowing me to share. Thank you, Jay.
Yay. Oh my God.